Welcome back. Bonded Voices, Gen X Season 2. Well, it's technically Season 2 of Bonded Voices, the Gen X season. Today, as we sit around this table and have a cup of coffee, we're going to discuss one of the great shows that really covered a lot of interesting topics, Married with Children. If you can think back to that show, join us for an action-packed discussion. I'm Greg.
This is Lauren.
And I'm Ian.
So this particular show is interesting as we talk today in 2024. And really the ideas of marriage, how did Al Bundy make it work? And Peg. Wasn't that her name?
Yeah.
Yep.
Well done.
Peg and Al Bundy, their wonderful neighbors, the colorful kids, all the chaos, a shoe salesman. Didn't they survive on just his income?
Yeah.
As a shoe salesman in the local mall.
She was the bonbon queen. Yeah.
Yeah. So times have changed. The single income family definitely changed. But what did we learn from that show? And is it relevant today?
Well, think about it. What have we learned through the whole Gen X era around divorce and how important families are? Because I think if we look back to the time before divorce skyrocketed, society was probably a better society. Not probably. Society was a better society. It was safer. You had less anxiety. You had less stress. I just think overall, family, and look, we're all happily married people. Family is important. Marriage isn't easy. Like a preacher at our church always says, is for all these guys who, want to experience more than one woman in their life, he goes, try getting married, you'll experience quite a few of them. So I always think it's quite a funny thing with his wife sitting down there in the front, right? So, but we know it, right? It's a difficult journey. But what you give to kids, or your own children who you raise, and the example it sets within your neighborhood is important. I don't think it should be dismissed or should have been dismissed the way the entertainment industry since Gen X have done it, where, and we've talked about this before, every male for the last 20 years on any ad and any TV show is a dumbass. Mm-hmm. They're not capable of unscrewing a soda bottle, right? Al Bundy for that case, right? He's selling women's shoes. The whole premise of that show is he is a loser. He's a married man and he is a loser. Mm-hmm. Disrespected by his wife, disrespected by his kids, disrespected by his neighbors. No one respects him. Mm-hmm. And what does he lean on? 4 touchdowns in one game back to his high school career.
Great memory.
Polk High,
exactly.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. You guys, I enjoyed the show because you guys were
Greg, I know the show way too well.
Well, it's interesting how his interactions with the family were so negative. Like, he didn't have, like, a touching moment. I mean, I think they were scattered through the...
Yeah, but he'd always go, "Oh, Peg, no!" If she wanted to have sex with him or like kiss him or whatever, he'd always scream.
But it's those are one of the first shows that actually showed that type of dynamic in a family and showed marriage in a bad light.
It did, but I think it also showed as well that the way the kids treated him. It almost painted the father who wanted to go and provide for his family is a sucker. Because the kids are always coming up from taking money away from him, taking his money, not giving him anything in return, not helping him do anything, and he was always the last. And so they not only destroyed the idea of marriage within that TV show, but they also destroyed the idea of a good man being the head of a household and actually being honored for the hard work and everything else he puts in.
Which is interesting because they've done interviews with Ed O'Neill, and I think it was Christine Applegate was the daughter, and later in life, and they have a really close relationship where she actually thought of him as a dad. Yeah. And it was an actual good relationship, not the phony relationship that they portrayed.
Well, you hear that a lot in Hollywood because they have those sets that you work on, they have so much time together that they become surrogate families. Because you're there with them 16 hours a day sometimes.
Yeah.
Which is really interesting to think that I don't know him all that well, Ed O'Neill, but if Christina Applegate saw him as a father figure, then safe to make the assumption that his on-screen character was very far from his off-screen character.
Yes. Well, it's funny because in that show, he is,
misogynist and racist and all that sort of stuff.
And then he's in Modern Family as a father, and his family loves him.
Yeah. Yeah, as a very funny grandfather.
Right.
And has all the wisdom that the family looks for, which is really interesting if you think about, did Hollywood shift to, because Modern Family was a fantastic television show about very dysfunctional topics. So the goofball dad and his wife and their 3 kids, the chaos that ensued there, the one son who's, I don't know if he was married in the show. I think they were married.
Yeah.
And Ed O'Neill handling that with his new wife from Colombia, who was a model. The script almost wrote itself, but portrayed him in a much better light.
Oh, yes.
And he was respected and actually had wisdom and wasn't a bumbling idiot.
He was the patriarch of the family instead of the jester.
See, and it's in Married with Children, they portray him as the guy who's reluctantly married and is always chasing younger, prettier women as well. And he hates fat women, so he's got these things where he'll come over, a fat woman came into the shoe store today, and that's part of his story. So he hated everybody. He was like that guy who was like just a pig. So they never painted him in any kind of light whatsoever that was redeeming. But they did elevate the idea that, and I think this was subliminally done. Men, yes, you can be married and have children to further society, further the population, but you probably should be out looking for a hotter, younger girl. Which, again, leans into this whole idea of where this episode's going around, the whole idea of how important marriage is, and that sort of structure both for society, raising children, creating better citizens. It's funny because the other day I was talking with someone about when my kids were born, and they were kept going over, we'll give you tests to see if they're healthy, and we'll do the bun test on the back of the neck, and we'll see if they've got potential for Down syndrome. And I just stopped them and I said, can you tell me whether they're going to be a good human being or not? And they were like, what? And I'm like, that's all I care about. I just want to have children to further better people into this world. Mm-hmm. That was my biggest thing always. Like, I would hate to be the parent of a child killer, or where's your son? Oh, he's in jail. He raped 4 women. Oh, great parenting, right? And I know that isn't always the parent's fault, but at the same time, do they play no part in that culpability when you have children that go off the rail?
Well, I think we've all seen the situations and in a public environment where there's the child that's misbehaving and the parent, or the person that appears to be the parent, don't do that or else, don't do that or else, don't do that or else, right. And there's no repercussions, which is an interesting psychology path that we can go down on. Can you live a life without any repercussions?
Well, you can't without any consequences, because if you live without consequences,
maybe we've got the 2-tiered justice system. So if you have,
or the 3-tiered, like we talked about,
if you're in the right grouping,
you can live a life without consequence. Definitely.
Okay,
if you have enough money.
So if we take that into account, what's the percentage of the population that lives in that realm? Whether or not we agree with it, we all acknowledge it. 1%. 0.5%?
I think it's the top of the pyramid.
Yeah, I'd say it's 1%, but it's the most visible percentage too. It's one of those things where it's 1% of the actual population, but it is 50% of what is portrayed. So what you see in reality is you would think that it's 50% because
I see.
Yes, they're so prevalent. Yeah.
Okay, so if it's the 1%, what about the other 99%? And can they, like, at what point does living without repercussions or impact or penalties or consequences, at what point will the ship get righted? Will that child ever acknowledge, wow, geez, I better listen to that person?
But that's where parenting's so important, right? Because if you get these schools who say your child's misbehaving, unless the parents do something about it, the kid doesn't care what the teacher
just transfer
thinks.
the kid.
It was interesting. There's a black woman on TV, like she's being vilified for this, but she went to the school and her kid was. It's told her kid was totally messing around in class. She basically starts beating him right in front of everyone else. So people start videoing it, and then she's demonized for child abuse. And you go back 50 years. If I told my mother I was in detention today, you're gonna get a second whooping. Not that you got one in school, but like because your parents didn't want you to dishonor the family name.
Sure. Here's a question: did you guys have corporal punishment at grade school?
Yes, I had to hold my hand out and get whacked with a cane.
Yeah.
I remember our principal had a paddle, and I remember it. I was never hit by it, but I remember.
Sure.
I remember that paddle, and it was just enough to scare you. Like,
Yeah, right.
crap,
Because there's consequences.
So I can recall a fourth grade teacher was famous for her paddle. And once you were swatted, you signed it.
Wow.
There were holes drilled in the paddle to increase the velocity of the paddle.
Like a paddle ball.
It was epic. And that, I think, probably helped some kids at a very pivotal time in their lives realize, And I also think that teacher had a huge amount of parental support.
Yeah.
I don't think
But that was back in the 70s.
Right.
And before one-parent
Early
households.
80s.
There's no way a one-parent household would, in the main, support that.
Well, I don't know about that. I think one-parent households back then would. Maybe not now. I think it's more of a generation of the... I think it almost is a product of being... We were feral as kids. So we got...
Yeah.
We were, right?
Yeah, pretty much.
You know? So we went... I think as Gen Xers became parents, a lot of them went the other way. Like far like, oh, I'm going to be the helicopter parent. And it's the helicopter parents that will not allow their kids to be punished. I've seen instances where kids will get into trouble and, you know, the parents go to the principal. Like,
Yeah.
So my younger sisters there was a party and there was police involved and all that kind of stuff. And it was right before prom, and the principal banned a certain set of kids from prom. Well, those parents banded together and went against the principal. And since they couldn't have prom, their kids couldn't have prom, they decided to have their own prom on the same night. And so that overshadowed the real school prom, and everyone went to the one that parents threw, so they could, you know, show the school that it wasn't, you know,
They didn't have control.
yeah.
But
My
it is
kids are
important for
adults.
parents to have that position where don't dishonor the family. And I've said this to my kids, that's not what we do in our family. Because I want them to have a certain amount of honor that we're just good people. We try to be good people, not we are good people. We try to be good people.
I want to go back to an earlier statement of a single parent might be more tolerant of that. I think there's beauty and a benefit in a married couple. And I've seen this in my own household of you take care of this, I've got to take care of that. And so when you have two adults that are working to cook dinner, to get homework done, to do all of those things. I think that the two-parent household has an advantage to be able to deal with granular things with each child that a single-parent household, maybe they had to stay late at work, maybe they're rushing through the drive-through, and so I don't know about today's. I don't know if there's a distinction in the parenting skills of today's society based on how many parents are in the household. I think it's a mindset shift.
No, I think it is, because I think you learn from others. Like we've learned conversation right through our coffee group and through this. I think parents, you mature, because think about it, when most people get married, they're in their 20s. You look back at 20s and you think, wow, I got married in my 20s. What was I thinking? And my parents had all 4 boys in their 20s. Right? And there they are, jobs, dealing with life, taking care of 4 babies, in that era. I think when you do that, you're continually learning to parent. There's no, like, oh, you're qualified. But we know that's not the case, right? So I think to learn to be good parents, you have to fail, and you have to be willing to talk to your wife, or wife talk to her husband, and say, look, yeah, we can't do it this way. But the kids cannot be out yelling at 11 o'clock at night when we have neighbors who we know go to bed early.
Yeah.
But I go along with to answer your question, Greg, I think it's a relatively new. You didn't have this problem in the 70s and 80s like you do now.
No, it's definitely worse now than it's been.
Of the helicopter. The term that I like are the lawnmower parents. Rather than just looking over, that term lawnmower is indicative of parents that carve a path out for their kids, remove any obstruction. So rather than the helicopter being someone that watches over and doesn't let the kid out of their sights, which, it's a scary world. If I was raising kids, I'm not sure how I would act right now. I'm thankful that my kids are teenage and above. But the lawnmower parent is the one that I think, similar to the story that you said of prom.
Yep.
And these kids got in trouble. So you know what? We're just going to carve out our own path and forget you, school. We're creating a solution. We're just mowing right through that problem.
But isn't it funny, right? When you look at the Mormon community, where polygamy was a part of there, and it was vilified. We've got to shut it down. We have to arrest them for having more than one wife and having all these kids. And then you have this other part, which has grown out of the hip-hop movement, where I'm a daddy to 7 kids. I don't take care of any of them, but they're my kids. That's not parenting. Like, dogs do that. There's no achievement in banging a bunch of women and getting them pregnant. But yet, society looks at those people like Jay-Z and those others who have multiple kids, and they're like, yeah, what a guy. I want to be that when I grow up. And we wonder why society starts to collapse.
Well, I think you brought up a good point, specific to the Mormon faith. I think that they actually still maintain a very high value in family.
Yeah, they do.
And the idea of raising the family and keeping the kids surrounded by like-minded families. And I think there are other parts of society that aren't worried about that. They're not worried about who are my kids hanging out with. And I don't want to say that the parents aren't. Like, this is a really difficult topic. I know that my wife and we sacrificed, and we don't regret any of it, to make the decisions that we made.
Right.
To create the situations that we did, to make things work, because we wanted to have 3 children that will be contributing members of society.
What about the 4th one? No, sorry. No.
I said my wife and I. Just for the case in point, no 4th child. So, and I think that the parents of today are doing the best that they think they need to do. But why did we seem to go through hundreds of years and then a significant shift in parenting style?
You said it a minute ago, and it just was like, bang, it punched me in the face. That's why I made the joke about fourth child, which is sacrifice. I think that ultimately, to be a parent and to get married, you are sacrificing. You really are, because you hear people saying, why would you want to get married? I can have sex with as many different women that I like. I keep all my own money. No one tells me what to do. I can stay up as late as I want. I can travel on my own. And you're like, oh, it's kind of an appealing life. And then you go, yeah, but it's not. Because it's a very selfish life. Because you're not adding to society. Society will end unless we have more children.
So you're talking about how with the people helping out and raising the kids, I wonder how much impact our grandparents, prior to Social Security and all that, where the elderly or your parents would move on to, old folks' homes or all that, they used to live inside the house with the family, and you're
like a lot of different ethnicities still do. Yeah.
Right. And so those grandparents were taking care of the kids, passed on traditions, doing all that. Now that we have more of a, these kids, or not kids, the kids don't know their grandparents as well. Sometimes they're lucky and they live in the same state or whatever. My kids were never lucky enough to be around the grandparents, but without the grandparents in there helping and adding additional discipline, I think that also contributes to the kids not being well mannered.
So think of this, takeaways from this episode. We called it Married with Children, mainly to make the point that marriage is actually important, because you look at societies that prosper, they've got a lot of married people in them. And to again, let's not forget this, to forward civilization, we need to have children. Mm-hmm. Or else the whole thing's over, and it actually can decline really quickly. So the whole idea is, for me, I look at this and I want to say to people listening out there, if you're struggling in a marriage situation, talk to people. Get out there and actually really just have conversations with people, have conversations with your church, go to church classes. Because I don't think marriage is supposed to be easy, and like I think you said it, Greg, it's sacrifice. And it should be an honorable sacrifice.
Well, absolutely. And that's a great point. So would I do it again? 100 times over.
Yeah, me too. Yeah.
And it wasn't like I went to bed, oh my gosh, I sacrificed today. No, it's for the greater good. Yeah. It's to move along civilization. It's to foster good people in society, so we have a well-oiled societal machine where, hopefully people look out for each other instead of feeling like, man, everybody's against me in this world.
Yeah, my brother's 3 kids, all in the medical field, so they're all pretty much going to be looking after people for their entire lives in their careers that they do.
Yeah.
What about you, Lauren? Takeaway?
It's having 4 kids and having the...
Oh, sure, you got to throw that in there.
Hey, I'm just saying...
4, 3, 2.
That's, Hey, I've got a little bit of experience.
Yeah, whatever.
No, I like to think that my kids will turn out to be decent.
Little Laurens?
Nah, not that much. I would hope that they all have they're contributing to society. They're all individual, do the things that they want to do. Mm-hmm. But they see the commitment that my wife and I had to make sure that they had a stable life, and that when they raise kids, they do the same thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's great to have multi-generational, to have that family tradition. I think is important. And I also think it's becoming more and more rare and potentially more sought out by other people, like their peers. I think I've shared the story before of when I was in high school, invited a friend over for dinner, and they said, wow, do you do dinner with your family every Sunday night? Yeah, we do. Wow, I haven't had dinner with my family in months.
Yeah.
And so I think there's value in the family, in that the television show of Married with Children is kind of an ironic statement because it really portrayed the negative side of things. And I think where we wanted to go with the conversation today around this cup of coffee is the beauty of a family.
Well,
the blessing,
yeah,
and the sacrifice.
So in my world, my parents were divorced. So hopefully we'll get to a point where my children, when they have children, will have married grandparents.
Mm-hmm.
That hasn't existed for my family, my brother's family. They've all had divorced parents, which again I think is something that's been endemic within that boomer generation. And hopefully the Gen X generation will fix it somewhat.
Do you think that do you see that as a challenge?
Oh, it's a challenge, yeah, for sure.
That, you know what, we're going to work together and we're going to make this come hell or high water.
Yeah.
We're making this work because I want my kids to be able to see it.
No, I don't think it's because some people might say, well, then why are you together if it's that much of work? It isn't that much work, but it isn't easy.
Right.
You know?
It's not the work aspect of it. It's to give them a, because I come from, both parents were divorced. My dad was married.
Not just one of them?
Yeah, both. Multiple times. I meant to say multiple times.
There you go, yeah.
My dad was married 5 times, my mom a couple times. So I've been around it. I want to give my kids, a stable platform to begin to launch their life from. Because while I feel like I turned out okay, it definitely makes it harder for the next generation if you throw additional obstacles at them.
And I think ultimately, and to wrap it, is when we look at the way our country has moved in the last 30 years, the lack of marriages and stable marriages, I think, has definitely been a part of that detrimental effect.
Yeah, I think that it's worth the work. It's worth the effort. At least I think that society enjoys. It's worth the effort to create the environment, and it's not always easy.
Yeah. To everyone out there, you're better than 4 touchdowns in one game. There's a hell of a lot more to life. Some people don't even get to their zenith in their life until they're much older. So until next time, I'm Ian.
I'm Greg.
And this is Lauren.
And we'll see you next time on Married with Children. Bundy Voices. Season 2, Gen X. Till next time.